All right, hello everybody here in presence and all you guys watching at home. So this is now episode 13 of the BravoPB wheel. I got my awesome assistant here who helped me put the ingredients on the wheel. And now you know how this goes. We spin it 3 times. Whatever 3 ingredients it lands on, I must use those ingredients. And I'm able to use whatever else I got on the table. But this is just to simulate what a lot of you at home go through when you open up your fridge and your pantry, and a meal must come from whatever's there rather than the perfect situation where you open up your cookbook and everything is right there. So here we go. We're going to say, spin that BravoPB wheel.
Yay!
All right. And it lands on
Potatoes.
potatoes. Okay, so I got myself some Yukon Gold potatoes. All right, I like this start. All right, spin number 2. Here we go.
Come on. Where it stops. Pepper. This is doable.
Pepper. Okay. I'll let the audience choose. I have poblano peppers and I have green bell peppers.
Poblano.
Yeah, you guys are gonna pick that. All right, spin number 3. Here we go.
Come on.
So are you going to use, you're going to use those 3 plus whatever.
Plus whatever else I choose. Yeah.
Orange.
Okay, so for today we are going to cook with potatoes, poblano peppers, and orange. Here we go. So here's what I'm thinking. I have these lovely red butter leaf lettuce leaves. So I'd like to do a lettuce cups for you. So it'll be a potato poblano sort of filling in there. And then I'm going to use the oranges along with some curry leaves to make a sauce. A nice drizzle over the top. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Sound good? Okay. And my idea here is that the potatoes are going to provide a nice sort of filling, very satisfying as you eat this. A filling. And then I'm going to play off of the spiciness of the pepper with the tartness of the orange. So those flavors are what's really going to make the dish. The curry leaves are just going to add a really nice sort of touch to that. So I am going to add some red onion here, somewhere along the line, some celery, and I actually have some celery hearts. So celery hearts are going to go in there. We'll add a touch of carrot, sunflower seeds. So the sunflower seeds I'm going to use to make the sauce with the orange and the curry leaves to make sort of this creamy orange sort of dressing to go with this. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I got to do is I got to cook the potatoes, obviously. And so we'll start there. And I'll set the rest of my ingredients down so that
So why wouldn't you want the skin on that potato?
I hate potato skins. I mean, I don't hate them. I just dislike them.
Aren't there nutrients that we're supposed to get?
Could care less. Could care less about whatever nutrients. I just don't like them. To me, what happens to me specifically is I get the sort of a itchy feeling on the back of my throat, which I can tolerate. So it's not that I hate them. You know, it's not like dill, which I loathe.
What about the peppers? Is it the seed inside all the peppers that's hot, or is the whole thing hot?
The peppers and the veins are where you find most of the heat in the peppers. Whether it be poblano, which we're about to use, or jalapeno, chipotle, you know, any of those.
So if you take out the seeds and the veins, it's less hot?
Less hot. You're not taking all the heat away, but it is less, yes. So I'm not gonna get very fancy with the potatoes. I'm just gonna dice them, simmer them basically. You know, nothing fancy. My main flavor punch is gonna come from the sauce and the bouncing off the heat and the tartness of the orange. The potatoes are here just to provide filling. So I'm gonna get a little bit of broth. And then just to make the time go by faster, I'm gonna cut them small. And you know what? Instead of dicing them, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut them in like strips. So what I'm thinking now, this will help hold them better. You know, as you grab them with your hands, if they're all diced, once you pick up that lettuce leaf, they start to just sort of fall all over the place. So this will actually help for functionality. Okay, so again, I'm just got the potatoes there in the broth. I'm just gonna simmer them. It'll probably take somewhere in the 5-7 minutes to get them nice and soft. Then they'll be done. By that time, I'll have all the other stuff.
Was the water already boiling?
No.
So you're bringing it to a boil and then going to simmer? Or?
Yeah. You don't want to, I wouldn't want to cook them at a rapid boil, because what happens is the potato, so imagine that this is one stick of the potato. If it's boiling too rapidly, what happens is the outside of it starts to disintegrate while the center is still not cooked. If you cook it at a nice gentle simmer, the whole thing heats up evenly, it cooks evenly, and it stays intact. So, make sense? Yep, okay.
Sounds like professional chef stuff there.
Okay, so now, I don't think I'm gonna need the whole pepper. I'm just gonna take half probably. You know, I'm going to avoid all the seeds in here. This might be enough. If we need more, I'll get more. So, I'm going to be brave here because poblanos are usually not spicy, but 1 out of 10 you get, and there's no way necessarily to know. You could, I mean, I could certainly take a small strip, bite down on the rib. It's got a very small, so I'm okay. What happens is sometimes, oh, it's got a little more kick than I thought. Okay. Problem is here, I did not bring any gloves. Okay, and sometimes with a poblano, you think, oh, it's not spicy. You cut it, you go on about your day, you touch your face, you go to the bathroom, and then you're like, oh. So, but that's what happens. Sometimes you're at home and you're like, oh, poblano, I don't have any gloves. Oh well. Okay. So we are simulating real life. Peppers go in. Now the idea is that with the peppers, if you're not into spicy food, you're like, that's not something I would want to use. What's going to happen is the tartness of the orange is going to help mellow that down quite a bit. Okay, so if you just eat pepper and you put it in your mouth, you're like, ooh, spicy, I don't want that. But if you combine that with the tartness of the orange, what happens is you get some contrast in there in your taste buds. So your brain cannot just focus on the spiciness of the pepper. That way, it's still just as spicy, but your brain does not compute it as spicy because it's processing other information at the same time. Then here is my ingredients as I'm going to add them. Celery leaves, which come from the celery hearts. They are adding a slight bitterness to this. Not in an offensive kind of way, it's just a slight, tiny bitter, along with the saltiness of the celery. So that's why I'm using those. Let's see, what else? I brought some red onion. This I brought because I want some color in here as well. And also, onions and garlic always give you a nice depth of flavor. So it just gives you a more well-rounded flavor profile to just about anything you cook. So that's why I'm bringing this in here. And then I'm also going to slice it really nice and thin. For those of you who were asking about my courses earlier, you learn how to hold a knife properly, how to chop without losing your fingertips. So, okay. Onions. Okay. So I'm gonna take a small section of my carrot and I'm going to add some wavy cuts. There we go. I'm going to stack it like a deck of cards and go the other way.
Do the cuts have an effect on the texture of,
Yes.
of the food?
The cuts do have an effect on the texture. I would almost argue that it also has an effect on the flavor, because the thinner you cut something, the more oxidation that happens. If there's any acidity within that dish, the quicker it pickles. So the way you cut something does have an effect on flavor as well. Check one of these potatoes. They almost feel like they're ready. Another sort of cool trick here is because I'm here in this setup, I have no way of cooling these down. So they're just sort of al dente, okay? And I'm going to allow the residual heat to carry them over, okay? So technically they're not quite there, okay? But I'm going to stop right here.
You mean otherwise you would have run cold water on them or something like that?
Correct, but I have no cold water here.
Yeah.
Like we said, we're just simulating real life where you are where you are and you got what you got. Okay, so now I'm going to make my sauce while the potatoes cool down and then the whole thing comes together. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So now, I mentioned that my sort of interesting flavor is the curry leaves.
And is that a common supermarket item?
No, unfortunately not. It is common if you go to an Asian supermarket.
Oh, okay.
We also said we had
Sunflower seeds.
sunflower seeds, and now they disappeared.
I think they're there in front.
They're by the
Oh, here it is.
left.
Here, they're right here. Okay. So, chocolate flavor.
Are those raw or roasted?
They're roasted. That's why I took a quick sample. Okay. You know what? I actually have to. I always remember, Vitamix blenders don't do well with small quantities. I have to make a large quantity of this in order for it to blend. Okay. Now, I'm going to use one of my very favorite tools here in the kitchen, which is my microplane zester, so that I can add the orange zest in here. If you don't have one of these, you should. They are an essential tool. Maybe that much zest. And then we'll juice the rest. Oh,
Red.
blood orange. I did not mean for that to happen. Okay, I
Well, it
guess
is what it is.
it is what it is. Okay, I'm not sure if I want this necessarily totally red. So I do have the orange zest in there, so I do have my pronounced flavor, that orange flavor. But we're gonna add certainly some vegetable broth, so this will be our liquid. And I'm also going to add So this is my solution to the fact that I didn't necessarily want a red orange sauce. So I have here an Asian pear.
Does the Vitamixer always require a liquid to blend anything? Like we-
Not necessarily, but it requires a certain amount. Small amounts on a big Vitamix don't do well. That's the,
You can chop stuff in there.
yes, of course, yeah.
I would,
Okay, so what I'm doing here is I am adding a white substance to the dressing so that I don't have such a pronounced red. Never forget a slight bit of depth of flavor. I'm gonna add a small chunk of shallot to this. And let's see what it comes out with. Now those guys just get chopped up a little. Excellent. Now we taste again. Much better. Much better. Okay.
so what does the flavor taste like? I'm not gonna be able to taste it.
So right away what I get is the orange immediately. And that's the acidity, which is perfect because I'm calling this an orange and curry leaf dressing. It's the, right after the orange, what happens is I start getting this sort of toastiness, and that comes from the sunflower seeds. I can never taste the onion, but there's just a, rather than go, oh, orange, and the toastiness, and then it falls flat, there's this sort of orange and toastiness, and it just sort of continues there because of the depth of flavor from the onion. Then at the end, that's when I start picking up the little bits of the curry leaves, and they sort of go into the sort of spikes where you're like, ooh, orange, toastiness, curry leaf, curry leaf, curry leaf.
Okay.
That's-
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking I got this sort of a nice, colorful, sort of fun shapes slaw here. I'm gonna add half of the potatoes to it. And just by looking at this, what comes to your mind automatically?
Salad.
Coleslaw?
Coleslaw? Salad. Okay. Does it look appetizing to you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Color.
Colors.
Colors. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different colors there. So visually, you're like, ooh, you know, what is that kind of thing? If you were to look a little bit closer to it, you'd notice something interesting. You go, maybe I don't want that. Can anybody sort of see?
Provolone.
Nope.
The carrots,
But if you don't like celery, you're like, I don't want
the
that.
carrots are too big.
Nope.
Is there liquid in there? I can't see. Okay.
A little more.
It needs more liquid.
Which means it looks
Dry.
dry. It looks dry. So you're like, man, it looks interesting, but if I take a big mouthful of that and start chewing it, it's gonna take some work to incorporate enough saliva in there to be able to just pass it down. So it looks interesting. I don't know that I want any. Okay. So that's what's missing. It's missing that moisture, and that's where our dressing comes in. So we're gonna add a little bit of this. Mix. And then suddenly, what do you see?
Much better.
Much moisture. Okay, you're like, oh, there's sauce in there. I want some of that now. Okay. Let me see. Problem with doing lettuce wraps is that they're so odd in shape.
Say go wrap, just feel the leaf, let them wrap it when they get it.
Let me see. So that'd be one way to serve it, I suppose. Or I'm gonna do a couple different plate ups here. Get out of here.
Do you think that's enough for an entree serving?
No. This is more of a appetizer,
Salad.
salad kind of thing. Yeah. I was not thinking entree at any point in time.
Okay.
I was just thinking flavorful, yummy dish. So another way in which we could serve this would be to have a nice amount of this and make it pretty. Don't fall. Okay. And then say here, make your own kind of a thing. So you can either have them made for you or they're there. Okay. And there's a perfect amount of dressing for the slaw itself, but you'll end up with these sort of dried lettuce leaves. So it doesn't hurt at all to sprinkle a little bit of dressing there for the lettuce. I have a little bit here of sesame seeds just to give me more specks.
Is that what you call finishing the dish?
Well, it was looking like it needed a little bit of sprinkles over the top. So that's it, boys and girls.
Oh, yeah.